Hello and welcome to the Sports Leadership Playbook podcast. My name is Dr. Robert Pryor, and we're happy to welcome Amanda Heglin. She's the Senior Director of Partnership Activations for the Boston Red Sox.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Just a little bit about Amanda. She graduated from the Sports Leadership Program back in 2008. I'll open the floor and let her tell how she ended up with the Red Sox and her path to where she is in her current position, which I believe was a recent promotion. So congratulations. Job well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of been a great and crazy path. I joke that when I was in high school and I had to do interviews for scholarships for college, they'd always ask that traditional question of, where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? And, I'd always say, well, I want to work for the Boston Red Sox. So as cliche as that sounds, everyone's like, "Oh, okay, the girl from small town New Hampshire, sure, go make it in the big city."
Right.
But I made some choices for my undergrad of going to a program that was accredited and had an incredible internship experience built into the curriculum. So I was able to gain some incredible job experiences before I was even finished school. My first internship, I worked at my high school athletic department, which is a great experience, but at that time realized not really what I may have been interested in at the time. That may have also been because I was a freshman in college and was actually back at my high school working with my friends. So maybe I didn't experience it the same way that I would have if I had done it later on in my schooling. And then I went on to intern for the Keene Swamp Bats in the NECBL. And the area that I'm from is around Keene, New Hampshire. And very fortunate that it's a big softball, baseball community for being, a small town area. But with that, we have incredible feeder programs. We have the NACBL. We have really great schools. So that was a great experience, especially for an organization that's volunteer based. They just celebrated, I think, 20 or 25 years in the NECBL. So that was a really cool experience. And to have seen some of the athletes from that team have made it into the majors is really cool. And when you hear the allure of the Cape Cod League, that's what I grew up hearing. But we had the NECBL, and that was our creme de la creme. So that was a really cool experience to go through and do that. And then for my semester long internship, I actually went all the way across the country and I worked for the Lake Elsinore Storm, which is the single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. So that was just, as I talk about experiences and where I've come from and what I've done, that was such a learning experience for me on so many levels.
Hmm.
I had never really left New England other than a couple vacations, maybe to Florida. And so to call my mom about 2 weeks before the semester ended of the fall of my junior year to say, I think I'm going to California next semester. And to pack everything up from school home and end up in Southern California for just over 9 months was an incredible experience. I was living with guys, which was a different experience, but working in minor league baseball was an incredible experience. One of my very first assignments there leading into the season was we had an exhibition game against the major league team at our venue, at our ballpark, and I was responsible for the VIP party that took place during the pregame. So that was a cool experience to get some exposure. And now on the backside of some of the people that were at that party are now my colleagues. That was really cool. But in a roundabout way, once I finished that internship, I'd actually done that a semester early. So I overlapped a little bit into the fall semester of my senior year. So I came back maybe like mid October because our team had made it to the postseason and I wanted to be able to see that through. I came back to finish my senior year at Endicott, and at that time was like, "You know what? I should just start looking around." My internship experience as far as trying to find internships was a little heartbreaking, although all's well that ends well because I had
Hmm.
an incredible experience going to California. But I was just like, "I'll just start looking around." And then there was a position in the ticket office for the Red Sox that opened up, and I said, "I'll just give it a try. I'll see what happens. That's where I wanna be, right?" That's
Mm-hmm.
what I always said. I was fortunate enough to get the interview, went in. I still remember to this day everyone that I interviewed with, one of which is now my boss, but that would be the perfect ending to the story, right? Of to get the position right off the bat. but I didn't. I actually didn't get selected for that position. So I kind of was just like, well, I guess that's how it's going to be. I'll just pick it back up during the spring semester and once it gets closer to graduation and see what comes about. So that was around like Thanksgiving of my senior year. And then mid-February, I get back from one of my classes and I have a voicemail. And it's from the Red Sox saying, we recently had some movement within our organization that opened up some spots. We wanted to call you back and see if you're still interested. So I said, I sure am, and kind of went from there. And that was an interesting experience to start too. I was in the ticket office and where, everyone kind of gets their sales and start in sales.
Hmm.
When you join the ticket office or, a ticketing program at a professional sports organization, the Red Sox were in the middle of a multi-year sellout streak. So I had more of a customer service experience than I
Mm.
had a external, sales position. But I think that kind of helped me lead my path to what I wanted to do and that I made myself available whenever different shifts opened up. I was only part-time at the time, but we were able to work full-time hours at that point. But it was a lot of customer service. The scalpers were stealing tickets. They were sending them to people's houses and going and taking from their mailboxes, which is a crime. We do know that.
Right.
But it was, some of the hardest stories of a mom showing up with her son or daughter during the World Series in 2007 with counterfeit tickets and having to
Mm.
tell them that unfortunately all that money you spent, we can't help you. But it really helped shape and understand the fan experience and customer service and hospitality.
Hmm.
So when the opportunity came to be able to move into a different position when it was opened, I took that. So I moved into client services, working with some of our premium season ticket holders. And then by way of that, just continued to make myself available when different opportunities came up to help out. And that led to becoming the sole person for sponsorship on the activation side. So very long-winded way of one to the other. It kind of all flowed
Sure.
together. It took some time, but
Hmm.
kind of shifted into
Right.
different
But
roles.
it shows, you were very persistent. And as an undergraduate student too, I know Endicott has, I think, two internship requirements. So that's great to get that experience as a student, and you knew what you wanted to do and to be able to work for the NECBL and then to go to San Diego to do that. You kind of knew that was your love, right?
Yeah, and
Baseball.
right, and it's crazy because I think at the time, if you had asked me what I wanted to work in, I don't think I knew to the extent. I just knew I wanted to work in
Hmm.
baseball. I enjoy
Hmm.
the business side of sports. When I was going through school, my brain just clicked and understood
Hmm.
things a little bit differently when I
Right.
could associate it back to sports because all my other
Hmm.
classes, I would say that's where maybe I struggled a little bit more because my brain wasn't making that association, but
Mm.
I continued to excel when I could look at it from that perspective of being the athlete and then being like, there is a business side to this as well.
Sure. Hmm. And your timing with just how the Red Sox, obviously their sellout streak was, it's different now where you have to be a little more proactive, but
Mhm.
sales is kind of the entry point, and to get that call right before graduation is also second semester senior year, you start stressing, and your
Yes.
family says, so what are you going to do when you graduate? So that's a relief. So what led to coming into the program at Northeastern?
So it kind of played into that I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And at that point, it was very much like to excel, you need to go on and have an MBA. You need to have this continued education. And I wasn't really sure that is exactly what I wanted to do. And then I had seen a former classmate of mine from Endicott had posted some stuff on Facebook because I don't even think Instagram was a thing at that point, but I think had started taking some classes within the program. And I started looking at that and was just like, It was really cool that I could, like, even take some classes without being fully enrolled at the point or at that point, and I was like, "Well, you know what, like, we didn't make the postseason my first year," so I was like, "Why not give it a try?" Like, jump in, take the opportunity, and then the program was so new too that it was cool to see how it was evolving over the few years that I was in the program, that it had been growing up to that point. Because I think I was one of the first few graduating classes, right?
I think you were the second class to
Yeah.
graduate. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really cool to be able to have that experience of, yourself, and, Peter Roby being in there and incredible individuals within the sport industry, as well as what the program was bringing for the individuals, and seeing what some of my classmates now have been doing. Like, I know you've featured a few of them, and we've all kind of followed each other's careers along the way because it is a very unique group, and because
Mhm.
everyone comes from completely different backgrounds. Like, I think that someone in my class was doing, like, worked at, like, a fruit company and was doing management or marketing there and wanted to try to break into the sports industry.
Mhm.
Had a lot of the coaches at Northeastern. You had a few that wanted to jump into, be athletic directors, and, I
Mhm.
was already in on the Red Sox side, but I think it was really cool that you could kind of work in the program what worked for you and pick those classes, and having that diversity of classes and seeing, again, like, going back and seeing what classes were available and what's available now, and having been able to stay connected with you. It was really just cool to see and have that extension of that
Mhm.
type of education that I knew worked for me and
Mhm.
worked on a schedule that would work for me. And then the
Mhm.
summer institute was really cool. I worked it into my game schedule, but it allowed that work-life balance and school balance of, this is what it's gonna be in life anyways, of there's always
Mhm.
gonna be something happening simultaneously as something else, and then having it be right in my backyard, but the resources and access to the network was really incredible, so I was fully enrolled, if you will, in that. So I took the classes and I said, "I think this is what I wanna do."
Mhm. And you've always been willing to speak with our students, and we actually bring our Summer Institute students out, and you take the time to tell your story there too. So it's nice to knowing that you were in that seat at one point, and they don't know where they're going to be in 10 or 15 years, but they'll be somewhere working in the sports industry and hopefully telling their story to a future student. So,
I hope
but
so. I mean, that's part of the reason why I do it is it is such a small industry. If you wanna say it's so big, but when you get down, it's very granular
Mhm.
and everyone knows everyone, and it is hard. Every position that gets posted in the sports industry has hundreds of
Yeah.
applicants. Trying to narrow it down, and to anyone who reaches out to try to connect, like, that takes something. Granted, it's, how they prepare and what that conversation is that next step, but I think for me, if I that is a way I can give back, and for so long, I couldn't give back financially. So what I could give back was, like, my time, my resources, my
Mhm.
experience, and I think that sometimes can be more valuable than financial sometimes.
Mhm.
And so it's an honor for me to be able to have these conversations and to meet with students because there is that ambition, and I see myself in them as we move
Mhm.
forward too. And I want to be hiring people that are eager. So
Mhm.
to give my time is really important to me.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for all that. So, tell us a little bit about what partnership activations is, and what other departments you really have to work in sync with in order to put together, you know, a presentation, a game. Like, there's so much happening behind the scenes. So, talk about that.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of give some clarity, we recently changed in the last few years to name our department partnership activation to kind of have a distinction from the sales side. We're a little bit unique at the Red Sox that all of our sales are actually done externally, if you will, through our sister marketing agency, Fenway Sports Management. So we work in tandem with them. They're the sales arm of everything, but they sell multi property across everything that's under our Fenway Sports Group portfolio and umbrellas. But on the partnership activation side, We've been known as sponsor services,
Hmm.
sponsorship, corporate partnership. So we did a little bit of research across the industry and across sports altogether to see, what would be helpful for our junior staff or our staff when they're going and looking at positions elsewhere to be most applicable to a type of position that they want, and what was going to be like different, like keywords that would be helpful. And we landed on partnership activation, and we have another person on our team who is partnership operations because sponsorship seems so business-like as well.
Mm.
Partnership is very inclusive, and your question of saying, who do you have to work with? Everyone. Everything is partnership because we can't manage asset fulfillment without help and assistance from every group. So I try to explain our position in a quick nutshell of our team is responsible for all the relationship management, activation, and fulfillment for all of our corporate partners. And that can be broken down in a few different buckets. That can be primarily IP rights, so intellectual property. I do a lot with approval of our logos with our partners. When a deal is signed, the FSM team will hand it over to us. And our team's a little bit unique in that typically most organizations would have a specific number of individuals that work on a specific partner or client. We do it by asset. So everyone on our team is completely involved in that specific client partnership. So there could be within their deal, there could be hospitality. So that could be tickets, pregame experiences like coming for a tour of Fenway, a first pitch. You could have concession integration, and then you have digital rights as well, which is all social and digital media that's done through MLB.com. So our team is responsible for really being the liaison between all the different groups while also filling ticket requests and approving IP rights and logo marks and all of that. So we are talking with them day to day. We're doing the onboarding calls. We're managing everything throughout the season. We're upselling and bonusing different assets where we can. And then our team also does end of season recaps, which leads into renewal conversations, et cetera.
Right.
So we're really the backbone of the partnership. And to have to work with every department, like I said, of it's relationship building, and it's you put in a lot of work on both sides because when we need to go to someone and ask for, special access or to get a little creative with a partnership, we need to have buy-in from those around us so that we can execute everything. So it's
Right.
crucial to work on those relationships, and we do touch on every department
Hmm.
because the partnerships are so inclusive of different elements and not every single one is the same.
Right. And the renewal is very important because new business is, challenging. But if you have happy partners that want to return or, sign a longer term deal, that's the hope, right? That's what you want to do.
Yes.
So giving them the experience they expect, and if they feel that they get a great return on their investment, then they'll continue to participate. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I know there's one, we always talk about this, but there's one partnership you had with Airbnb that I just loved how that was activated. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, that was a really interesting one, and it is something that I always give as an example of, what we do and how it all comes together. And so this was when Airbnb was just starting, probably gosh, almost like 10, 12 years ago now,
Hmm.
where someone on our sales team had been working with them to pull a deal together because Airbnb had just done a partnership and an experience with the Chicago Bulls where they had some guests come in and they did an overnight in the Bulls facility. So they basically came to us and they're like, we kind of want to branch out Airbnb into New England and Boston. What can we do for a partnership here? And it was brought to our team as the deal was finalized as very basic of like, okay, we're going to create this experience for these guests. What does that look like?
Hmm.
And there was no context, there was no assets assigned to the experience. So we really pulled it together from scratch and, adding the element of Fenway Park is 100 plus years old at that point. We're not a hotel. We're actually an open air venue as well. So we went from this very, very basic kind of concept to we ended up doing a full scale experience that started, it was a sweepstakes. So people had to enter for the opportunity to be selected. And then it was a couple that came in early on a game day. They got to go around and take a very, very VIP tour of Fenway. They were in our visitors clubhouse to check some experiences there, customized jerseys. This is actually like it's a special experience to me now on the back end because 2 individuals that were part of the experience have since passed,
Mm,
being Tim Wakefield and Louis Tiant.
hmm.
So it adds a whole 'nother element of
Right.
special for me, but as part of the tour, they went down on the field and played catch with Tim Wakefield. He took them inside the Green Monster.
Hmm.
They watched a couple of innings of a Red Sox-Yankees game with Louis Tiant right down
Mm,
in dugout box seats right off the field. And then while the game was happening, we had vendors loading in because as soon as the game ended, we outfitted one of our suites to be a full hotel room. There was even, like, foliage outside the suite, but it was a Fenway curated suite overlooking the field at night. So while that was being outfitted, we actually took them out to the right field roof deck where we had a literal candlelit dinner out there. The ballpark was completely empty except for the sweeper lights. And then after that, they spent the night in one of our suites, which never really been done at Fenway before. And then when they woke up in the morning, they got to have breakfast on the Green Monster. So there's a really cool video that was put together to recap the experience. And it talks a lot about the winners and why they were selected and their story of everything. So that was something that I was really proud of. And it was
hmm.
a huge team effort because Airbnb is actually a West Coast based company, so we were taking very late calls to accommodate their schedule,
Mm,
working with vendors that aren't part of our ecosystem, not understanding a baseball venue
mm,
and games and all of that. So it was
right.
something I'm and myself and our team are really proud of.
Or yeah, I mean, to have a concept and then to be able to bring it to life. And then I'm sure that the couple are probably still talking about it, right? That's probably, that would be a once in a lifetime thing for anybody. So that's really amazing. And that's probably something you could pitch to other clients just to show how creative you can be on the partnership side and what you can do to kind of look at what their needs are, what your needs are, and then how do you reach the consumer, right? Because that's really the ultimate goal.
And
So,
going back to that, we could not have done that if it wasn't with the support of all the other departments that we work with.
mhm.
And it was a total team effort.
Right. That's fantastic. All right. Well, we're just about to our time here. But we could talk all day, Amanda. But one more thing I'll ask just advice you would give to somebody who wants to work in sports, whether it be professional sports, college athletics, just what you would recommend to them, just because it is very competitive. There's so many applications that come across. What sort of advice would you give to give them kind of an advantage or an edge
Mhm.
in their job search?
That's a really good question, and I feel like it can go in so many different ways, but I think what always sticks out to me is just I always hate, like, referring back to, like, "Oh, it's, like, generational things or whatever," but I feel like the general context of, like, being able to carry conversations with people, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, taking opportunities that may not be completely ideal for what you're looking for at that
Hmm.
point. Experience is priceless. And so
Hmm.
that means, volunteering to sell 50-50 raffle tickets at an event or looking at local organizations that are putting on events that are tied to sports in some way that you can volunteer for. That all adds up and that all adds exposure to the people who are also going to those events.
Hmm.
So there's so many non-traditional ways to get your foot in the door versus just waiting for that one position that hundreds of people are
Hmm.
applying for. And on top of that, too, with the resources that are out there to connect with people, is understanding like what does that look like? How do you prepare? How do you make the most of someone's time when you are connecting with them? Because, like I said, I try to make myself available that if someone puts themselves out there, I try to make that time for them. But how do I how do I also make the most of that? Like, with what's out there, you can find out, like, it shouldn't be me telling you my background right away.
Hmm.
You can see that. So be prepared with your questions, be thoughtful, keep checking in, but not be a nuisance when you're looking for stuff, looking for advice
Hmm.
and what that looks like. I think too often people start reaching out when a position is posted to be like, "Oh, I'd like to learn more." And I know that really bothers other managers, but it is tough too because if you're just entering the sports industry, you don't necessarily know the opportunities that exist until they get posted.
Hmm.
You kind of
Right.
have to have that open mentality too of they don't know what they don't know, and we're not gonna get what we want if we're not open to thinking outside the box too. And you don't have to have a completely linear path of, well, I need to start in sports to work in sports.
Hmm.
You gain experience from all different ways. It's better to be working towards what you want, but building on the skills that are going to help you for that in the long run too.
Right. Right. Excellent advice.
I hope
And
so.
oh yeah, and it's networking, right? Relationship
Mhm.
building.
It's priceless. It
It's
really
and
is.
it's an art, and I don't know if it's taught well enough. We try to teach that in the sports leadership program and introducing students to people in the industry and helping them to have a connection to somebody that'll talk with them or listen. And you can't sit back and expect people to respond to an application online. You have to be a little more proactive and like you said, eager. You want eager people
Yes.
that are really passionate about working in sports.
Right, and you don't have to be a fan of the team either. If
No.
anything, like, don't even lead with that. We don't wanna hear that. We want you to be eager. We want you to be excited, but we don't we it changes how you view
Yeah.
sports when you work in
Right.
sports. You look
Right. Yeah. You're not sitting there watching games very often.
No.
You
No.
work nights, you work weekends. It's a really demanding job, but it's also so rewarding when teams win championships. And some people work 9 to 5 and they're bored and they really don't like what they do. And if you can enjoy going to work every day doing something you're passionate about, then it's really not work. It's a passion. So, and you found that.
Yes,
Obviously. Well, thank you very much,
of
Amanda.
course.
I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you joining us, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure, about getting together during the Summer Institute.
I
But
love it.
thank you for your time, and thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Sports Leadership Playbook podcast. Dr. Robert Pryor signing off. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you.